I'm Professor Gus Dekker. I'm an obstetrician at the Lyle McCune Hospital, so I work as an academic and as clinical doctor at the Lyle McCune. And in that work, I look primarily after women that had complicated pregnancies, and that might range from pregnancy losses to preterm birth to my main research area, which is preeclampsia. The question is indeed, why does the mother not reject? So the mother apparently needs to learn to tolerate the paternal signal, and what we think nowadays, and there's some pretty solid evidence then, that the mother gets used to the paternal proteins on the cell surface by having regular contact with the father prior to conceiving, i.e. that is by having lots of sex. So you get a lot of exposure to the sperm cells, you build up a partner-specific tolerance, and then when you finally basically really conceive of that same man, it's partner-specific, you have this tolerance, and that's what we call, that's the mucosal tolerance. The mucosa is the inner lining of the uterus. There you have a partner-specific tolerance, which then allows this placenta to develop and grow into the tissues. What's the problem with the placenta and preeclampsia? That's a question that has kept us busy for many decades. When I started my specialist training, I asked my professor what is the major real issues in obstetrics and gynecology. He said if you go for obstetrics, go for preeclampsia, and if you go for gynae, go for endometriosis. Now I went for obstetrics, so preeclampsia, which is, and I think our concept has changed over the years. Initially we thought it was just a high blood pressure during pregnancy, so we thought of it as hypertension, and we treated it as you normally treat basically the high blood pressure in non-pregnant individuals. Then many years later, so you talk about the 90s, we realized that it was a disease of the maternal endothelium, and because the endothelium was sick, you get the blood vessels to constrict and you get high blood pressure. And then we realized, so what makes that endothelium actually sick? And that brought us finally to, obviously, the organ that we should have looked at from the beginning, the placenta. So if you look at the exchange room between the mother and the baby, you have the mother on one side, baby on the other side, you have an exchange room which is called the intervillus space. And in that intervillus space you have these syncytial trophoblasts just floating, and that's the exchange room. And nowadays, and that's research over the past 5 to 10 years, we've discovered a lot of signals that come from a distressed or stressed syncytial trophoblast, and these factors cause the disease in the maternal endothelium that we then see as a high blood pressure disease and also organ dysfunction. Now we also have really appreciated only over the past 5 years that there are many pathways or ways you get to this stressed syncytial trophoblast. In the past, when we had discovered this immunology thing that I just mentioned earlier, we thought it was only immunology, and that's certainly part of particularly the earlier onset of preeclampsia, the rare early severe cases. If you go to our more common type that we see as obstetrician, there's actually not much immunology involved there. It's just a stressed syncytial trophoblast because of often lifestyle factors like obesity, poor food, and now talking about poor quality food. And I normally talk to the patient like the number of times you go to KFC and McDonald's, you basically cause direct damage to your syncytial trophoblast. So it's more like a lifestyle stress. So they might have the immune problem, they're not tolerant towards their partner. At the same time, they might have major obesity and don't have enough vegetables in their food, etc. It's basically a double whammy effect, and that's why we see, particularly where I work, we have a very high rate of preeclampsia. That's real distinct from countries like Japan, for instance. In the Lyle McCune where I work, we run 10% preeclampsia, and in the big units that I know in Tokyo, they're running 0.5% of preeclampsia. So we're at 20 times higher, which is just astonishing.